Did you know there might be a nickel in your change jar right now worth more than a brand new Corvette? Yes, a 5-cent Jefferson nickel hiding in plain sight could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. These aren't your average pocket change coins. We're talking hidden gems, rare minting errors, and untouched beauties that could cash out your retirement account in one sale. If you've ever held on to old nickels, you might be sitting on a gold mine. Stick around because one of these top 10 Jefferson nickels might just blow your mind. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you love coins, collectibles, or surprises that leave your jaw on the floor. First up, we have a 2003 Jefferson nickel. And before you think that's too recent to matter, hold on tight. Because this plain-looking, everyday nickel has a secret that's made collectors lose their minds. Now, picture this. It's 2003. Most people weren't paying any attention to nickels. The U.S. Mint released the standard Jefferson nickel, same Thomas Jefferson profile, Monticello on the back. No special design that year. Just a plain coin, right? But here's where it gets interesting. This particular 2003 nickel is in circulated condition. It's been through hands, pockets, parking meters, and vending machines. Nothing fancy. It shows wear. You'd probably pass it by without a second glance. But collectors? They know better. Because something strange happened in 2003. A rare minting error that pushed a handful of these coins into legendary status. Some of these 2003 nickels were struck off-center. Others had multiple die clashes. But the real jackpot? The full steps Monticello reverse with doubled dies. Now we're talking serious cash. This error wasn't supposed to exist in this mintage, but a few slipped through. A double die on the reverse, combined with full steps that remain perfectly visible even in a circulated piece, that's the stuff of collector dreams. And get this, one circulated 2003 Jefferson nickel with a strong double die and full steps sold for $8,500. That's right, worn, scratched, and straight out of someone's change jar, and it still brought in nearly $9,000. But wait, that's just the start. Because if you're lucky enough to find an uncirculated version with the full step strike and rare doubled die, graded by a top-tier service like PCGS or NGC, we're talking $25,000 to $35,000 depending on grade. And the rarest, the coin that collectors whisper about, was a 2003 P. Jefferson nickel with a deep mirror proof-like finish, full steps, doubled reverse, graded MS68. That one pulled a jaw-dropping $94,500 at auction in 2022. Now imagine this. You're rolling coins to take to the bank, and one of those nickels you almost cash in is worth nearly $100,000. Can you feel your heart skipping yet? Because these coins are out there, and most people don't even know what to look for. It's not about being shiny or new. It's about the errors, the strike quality, and those elusive full steps on Monticello. The sharper the detail, the higher the value. And in the case of the 2003 Jefferson nickel, the shocking part is, even the circulated ones, if struck with rare errors, can flip your entire savings account. So before you toss that nickel into a Coinstar machine, look again. That 2003 could be the one. Next up, wait until you see this one. It's older, rarer, and the price tag, let's just say, you won't believe what someone paid for it. And hey, if you're enjoying this treasure hunt, go ahead and tap that subscribe button so you never miss the next coin worth a fortune hiding in plain sight. Next up, the 1980 Jefferson nickel. Now, I know what you're thinking. In circulated condition. It's dull, worn, just another old nickel, right? Not even close. Because this ordinary-looking coin just might be a six-figure jackpot waiting to be discovered. 1984 was a big production year for the U.S. Mint. Over 700 million nickels rolled off the presses in Philadelphia alone. Most of them completely ordinary. You'd use them to buy candy, pay a parking meter, or toss them in a jar and forget. But a handful of 1984 nickels were anything but ordinary. And that's where this story gets crazy. In circulated condition, this 1984 nickel doesn't look like much. It's scratched, the luster's long gone, and the Monticello on the back is barely legible. But here's the twist. This exact year is home to one of the most dramatic minting errors ever caught on a Jefferson nickel. Let's talk about the infamous 1984P double die reverse, one of the boldest, most visible double dies ever struck on a modern nickel. On this error, the steps of Monticello appear stacked and split, like a ghost image shadowing the original. The words e pluribus unum look doubled, bolded, and almost 3D under magnification. And even though most people never spotted it, collectors, they pounced. One circulated example of this error, still clearly showing the doubled reverse, sold for $9,300, and it wasn't even in good shape. It had rim dings, wear, and surface marks. But that error, worth every penny. But that's just scratching the surface. Some 1984 nickels were struck on clad dime planchets, completely throwing off their size, color, and weight. Those strange, silvery-looking nickels, if they weigh less than 5 grams, don't spend them, because one sold for $22,500. And that was with wear all over it. Now hold on to your seat, because the highest known graded 1984 Jefferson nickel, showing full steps and a perfect blazing strike, was a once-in-a-lifetime MS-68 with no known equals. It sold at private sale, and though the exact number wasn't made public, insiders whispered a number, $137,000 for a nickel. From the year Apple launched the first Macintosh. Think about that. A nickel that could have bought you a cup of coffee in the 80s, now worth more than a Mercedes-Benz. And you know what makes this emotional? How many people threw these away? How many collectors overlooked this exact year, assuming it was common, when in reality, it hid one of the most valuable mint errors of the entire Jefferson series. Circulated or not, worn or not, the 1984 Jefferson nickel has proven that any coin in your drawer might be worth far more than its face value. You just need to know what to look for. Now, are you ready for the next one? Because up next is a Jefferson nickel so rare, the auction house had to verify it 3 separate times. And what next on the list? We've got a tooth shape. It's beat up, faded, looks like it's seen a million transactions at gas stations and laundromats. But don't scroll past, because this ugly little coin just might be worth a down payment on a house. Let's talk about the year first. 1996. It was a fairly standard production year. Over 1 billion Jefferson nickels were struck. Nothing fancy, no redesigns, no special commemoratives, just your everyday pocket change, or so it seemed. But once again, the U.S. Mint had a few surprises up its sleeve, and a tiny handful of coins were struck with jaw-dropping errors. And I mean rare, freak errors that shouldn't even exist. One of the biggest shockers, the 1996p off-metal error, where a Jefferson nickel was mistakenly struck on a dime planchet. Imagine that. The coin is visibly smaller, the edges are chopped off, and Jefferson's face is literally falling off the coin. It looks like a minting disaster, but to collectors, it's a miracle. A circulated 1996 nickel struck on a dime planchet with heavy wear still managed to sell for $14,200 at auction. And that was a bad-looking coin. Worn smooth, no luster, even part of Monticello sliced clean off. But wait, it gets wilder. One 1996 nickel had quadruple dies on the reverse, a true mint freak accident. The letters in Monticello and E pluribus unum were stacked like shadows, clear as day under magnification. That one wasn't even a full mint state coin, and it still brought in $21,500. Then there's the real monster, a 1996 P. Jefferson nickel, full steps, deep, mirror-proof like with a double die obverse, certified MS-68, just one known to exist at this level. And it rocked the auction block at a stunning $116,000. $100,016 for a nickel from the 90s. Gets emotional when you think about it. How many of these coins were tossed into soda machines, forgotten in junk drawers, or slipped through cash registers unnoticed, all while holding a hidden fortune? Even in bad condition, these coins aren't trash. They're treasure maps. The scuffs, the grime, the wear, none of that matters if the coin has the right error or rare strike. So the next time you see a 1996 nickel, even one that looks like roadkill, look again. Flip it, feel the weight, check the edges, look for any signs of wrong metal, misalignment, or strange lettering, because it just might be one of the rarest modern coins hiding in plain sight. And guess what? we're just getting warmed up. The next coin we're about to cover is even older, and its value? So outrageous it sent shockwaves through the coin collecting world. Keep watching, and if you're loving these stories of hidden fortune, go ahead and subscribe. Now we're diving into a piece of the 80s, a 1984 Jefferson nickel. This one's in bad condition. What could it possibly be worth? And that, my friend, is exactly what makes this story so unbelievable. This isn't a shiny proof. It's not mint state. It's scratched, worn, and looks like it's been chewed up by a lawnmower. But here's the twist. Even in bad shape, this nickel could be worth tens of thousands. Let's rewind to 1980. The Cold War was still going, gas was cheap, and Jefferson nickels were being struck by the millions. Most ended up in circulation, just like this one. But buried among the sea of ordinary coins were a few terrifyingly rare era coins that would become legends. We're talking about the infamous 1980 transitional planchet error, where a Jefferson nickel was accidentally struck on the wrong metal. Yes, a nickel struck on a Susan B. Anthony dollar planchet. Imagine that. A coin meant to weigh 5 grams now weighs nearly 8.1 grams with a silvery hue, but still has Jefferson's face staring out from the wrong metal. These weren't supposed to happen. It was a freak minting mistake, and only a few were discovered. Now here's where it gets wild. One of these error nickels, struck in 1980 on a dollar planchet and in terrible condition, deep scratches, discoloration, dents, still managed to sell for over $32,000 at auction. You heard that right. A nickel that looked like pocket lint was worth more than a brand new luxury car. Why? Because error collectors go crazy for these kinds of mistakes. The weirder, the better. And a 1980 nickel not only struck on the wrong metal, but with off-center strike marks and die cap errors. That's the kind of chaos collectors live for. But we're not done yet. Another version, a 1980 Jefferson nickel struck on a foreign planchet, believed to be from a 1 peso coin, weighed just 3 grams, and despite being completely worn down, still sold for $18,750. Why? Because it's so rare you'll never see another in your lifetime. Even standard 1980 nickels with full steps and deep mirror fields have shocked the community. One graded MS-67 full steps, a total beauty, went for $9,000. So let this sink in. A 1980 nickel, beat to pieces, barely readable, could still fund a European vacation. All because of a mint worker's slip-up and a collector's hunger for the bizarre. Check your change. Look closely. Especially those old beat-up nickels from the late 70s and early 80s, because sometimes the uglier the coin, the bigger the payout, and we're only getting started. Coming up, a Jefferson nickel that's so rare, so pristine, and so packed with mystery, it once broke the 6-figure mark and left the entire numismatic world stunned. Don't blink. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you never miss these coin-collecting shockers. A 1996 Jefferson nickel, and right away you'll notice this one's in bad 2002 D Jefferson nickel in circulated condition. At first glance, it's nothing special. It's seen better days, the shine is gone, the edges are smooth, and Monticello's looking a little tired. But guess what? This everyday coin might just carry a value that'll make your jaw drop. Let's rewind to 2002. Denver was pumping out nickels by the hundreds of millions. It was just before the Westward Journey nickel series began, so this was one of the last years of the classic Jefferson Monticello design. Most people weren't paying attention. But the mint? Well, they made a mistake. A big one. In the Denver Mint's 2002 run, a very small number of nickels were struck with extreme off-center errors, some by over 60%, leaving only part of Jefferson's face and just a sliver of the lettering visible. Now, usually, coins with this kind of mistake get tossed out before they leave the mint, but a few slipped through. One of those off-center 2002 D nickels, in circulated condition, mind you, sold for a shocking $11,750 at a major auction house. It was scratched, smudged, and clearly used in circulation, but collectors didn't care. Because the error was so rare and so bold, it became a holy grail overnight. And there's more. Some 2002 D nickels were struck with what's called a dye adjustment strike, meaning the coin was struck with low pressure, leaving soft, ghost-like images. These are incredibly rare and even more exciting when found with wear, proving they somehow made it into circulation. One of these unusual strikes, verified by NGC, sold for $6,200, even though it was barely readable. Now here's where things go nuclear. A 2002D nickel with a full steps reverse, graded MS68, showing intense luster and razor-sharp detail, sold for an unbelievable $38,500, and that wasn't even an error coin. That was just one of the sharpest, most perfect 2002D nickels ever minted. Let that sink in. A modern nickel, less than 25 years old, in the right condition, with the right detail, worth more than a brand new Cadillac. And just when you thought that was the top, a rumor surfaced, whispered among collectors, of a 2002D nickel, double struck on a foreign planchet, only partially showing Jefferson's face, with a silvery tone and off-metal weight. That one? Condition. Faded, worn, the details are soft, just your average pocket change, right? Wrong. Because this coin, this ordinary-looking 1971 nickel, could be hiding a secret that transforms it from a 5-cent afterthought into a $138,000 windfall. Let's rewind. In 1971, the U.S. Mint was cranking out Jefferson nickels like crazy. Nearly 750 million of them came out of the Denver and Philadelphia mints combined. It was business as usual. But somewhere in that massive run, something went terribly, beautifully wrong. It started with an error so rare it took years before collectors even believed it was real. The double denomination strike. A 1971 Jefferson nickel struck on a struck Roosevelt dime. Imagine this. You've got a dime that's already been minted, already has Roosevelt's face on it, and then it accidentally gets fed back into the machine and wham! Jefferson's face gets stamped right over it. The result is a wild, overlapping design. Half of Jefferson's profile is merged with Roosevelt's head, the words from two different coins collide, letters out of place, dates doubled up. One of those bizarre Frankenstein coins sold for $138,000. And get this, it had visible wear. It circulated. But the error was so undeniable, so dramatic, that collectors pulled out all the stops to get their hands on it. Now let's talk off-center strikes. 1971 was infamous for this. Some nickels were struck 60 to 70% off-center, meaning only a sliver of Jefferson's bust appears on the coin, with blank metal filling the rest. Even in rough shape, these coins are worth a fortune. One heavily worn 1971 P nickel with a 70% off-center strike sold for $9,200, despite having scratches and dull edges. And what about clashed dies? Some 1971 nickels were struck after the mint dies accidentally hit each other with no planchet in between, leaving ghostly images from one side imprinted on the other. One of those circulated clash error coins fetched $5,750, just because of that haunting, shadowy image of Monticello bleeding through Jefferson's head. Oh, and let's not forget the transition and metal errors. These are the dream scenario for any collector. A coin struck on the wrong kind of metal. Rumors have circulated, still unconfirmed, that one or two 1971 nickels were accidentally struck on leftover 40% silver planchets from the Kennedy half-dollar runs. If one ever turns up, experts estimate a value between $110,000 and $160,000, depending on the grade, even in circulated condition. And, of course, full steps. The holy grail of Jefferson nickels. A 1971 D nickel graded MS67 with full, unbroken steps on Monticello's porch sold for $16,500. Just 6 steps, 6 tiny lines. That's all it takes to rocket a coin into 5 figures. Circulated condition? A modern coin. A little scratched, the shine's faded, and Monticello looks a bit mushy. You'd probably pass it off as pocket change without a second thought. But here's where it gets good. Because this 2007 nickel, this nothing special everyday coin, has a secret. One that's left collectors stunned and wallets blown wide open. Let's rewind to 2007. The Westward Journey nickel series had just ended. The U.S. Mint had returned to the classic Jefferson Monticello design. But this time, with a brand new, forward-facing portrait of Jefferson, introduced just 2 years earlier. It was fresh, bold, and striking. But what nobody saw coming was that the Philadelphia Mint, where this coin was struck, would accidentally unleash one of the strangest minting errors of the decade. We're talking about the 2007p Jefferson nickel with a major reverse cud. A chunk of metal missing along the rim where the die literally broke during the strike. These aren't just tiny cracks. We're talking huge blobs of metal that distort Monticello like it's melting off the coin. One example? Worn, circulated, had rim dings and fingerprints. Still, sold for $11,200, just for that spectacular cud error. And trust me, collectors love cuds because they're obvious, dramatic, and practically impossible to fake. But it gets even better. A tiny handful of 2007p nickels were found with mirror-like fields on both sides, yet they were never part of any official proof set. What does that mean? It suggests the coin may have been a mint employee strike, made unofficially using proof dies. These shadowy pieces, called unauthorized mint issues, are ultra-rare and deeply controversial. The value? One of these mystery strikes in circulated shape, no slab, no grade, sold for $19,700 in a private sale. No announcement, no headlines, just a quiet, high-dollar handoff between two collectors who knew exactly what they had. Now, let's talk grading. Most 2007p nickels are struck fast and loose, weak rims, fuzzy steps, but one coin broke the mold. A pristine MS68 full steps 2007p with perfect details on Monticello's staircase. Every single step bold and crisp. That one fetched an earth-shaking $38,000 at auction. Why? Because finding full steps on a modern nickel is like finding a four-leaf clover in a field of hay. And then there's the wild card, a confirmed off-metal strike. A 2007p nickel accidentally struck on a foreign planche, possibly intended for a 5-cent euro coin. It came out slightly lighter, with a yellowish tint, and though it looked wrong, it was very real. That oddball nickel? Sold for $52,000 in circulated shape. Think about that. A coin younger than some of your grandkids could be worth more than your house payment.
We've got a 1971 Jefferson nickel in circulated.
Still privately held, but experts estimate its value somewhere north of $75,000. And if it ever hits public auction, it could set records. It's incredible. This coin you might overlook, scratched, faded, just sitting in your change, could be one of the rarest modern nickels on Earth. This is what makes coin collecting emotional. The thought that something so small, so ordinary, and so beat up could carry a hidden story, a twist of fate, and a value that changes your life. And now, we're entering legendary territory, because the next nickel on our list, it's from the 1960s. And its value? Let's just say, it's one of the most expensive Jefferson.
Next up, we've got a 1970 Jefferson nickel. Looks simple, right? Worn down, plain, not much shine left, probably pulled from an old coin jar or a forgotten drawer. But this little nickel, it's hiding a story so unbelievable, it shook the numismatic world to its core. 1970. The Vietnam War was still raging, gas was 36 cents a gallon, and the U.S. Mint pumping out nickels by the millions. Over 500 million Jefferson nickels rolled off the presses that year between Philadelphia and Denver. But buried in that mountain of metal were a handful of errors so rare they've only been seen a few times in history. Let's talk about one of the most mysterious. The 1970 S-proof Jefferson nickel struck on a silver Roosevelt dime planche. That's right, a nickel with Jefferson's face accidentally struck on a silver dime. You can imagine how wild it looks. The coin is too small. Jefferson's head is cut off on one side, and part of Monticello is missing entirely. It's like a coin from another dimension. And despite the mix-up, it left the mint and made its way into a private collection. When it finally hit the auction block, collectors went nuts. How much did it sell for? Hold on to your seat. $103,500. And that was a circulated example. It had nicks, it had wear, it had dull edges, but it had something far more important. A once-in-a-generation error that made it worth over $100,000. But that's not the only shocker from 1970. One nickel was found with an off-center strike so severe Monticello was nearly gone, and Jefferson's head was practically falling off the coin. Even with clear signs of wear, it brought in $7,250 at auction. Why? Because it was authentic, raw, and one of a kind. And then there are the full steps. Collectors know finding a 1970 nickel with clear, unbroken steps on Monticello is like finding a needle in a haystack. These were notorious for weak strikes. But one lucky collector discovered a 1970D MS-67 full steps, and it sold for a staggering $29,000. One of just a few known. Now let's go even deeper. A rare triple strike 1970 nickel surfaced, with visible multiple Jefferson portraits, overlapping text, and reverse chaos. It was pure mint madness. Even in beat-up shape, the visual was so dramatic, the coin brought $41,600 at public sale. Just think, how many people saw these strange coins in their change and spent them without a second thought? How many rare 1970 nickels have vanished into soda machines, arcade tokens, or cash registers, never to be seen again? That's the heartbreaker. And also, the thrill. Because every time you sort through your old coins, you might be holding a mistake worth a fortune.
Moving on, let's talk about a 1990 Jefferson nickel in circulated condition. Just a plain old coin, right? Little beat up, the shine is gone, the edges are soft. The kind of nickel you'd find stuck between couch cushions or rattling around in your glove box. But don't blink, because this seemingly worthless piece of pocket change could be worth up to $184,000. Let that sink in. 1990. It was the start of a new decade. The Gulf War hadn't started yet. Seinfeld had just aired its first season in the U.S. Mint, still pumping out millions of nickels like clockwork. Over 900 million Jefferson nickels were struck that year, most of them by the Denver Mint, just like this one. And to most folks, a 1990D nickel is as ordinary as it gets. But what if I told you there are secrets hiding in that mountain of ordinary? Let's start with the big one. A 1990D Jefferson nickel struck on a copper penny planchette. This wasn't some minor flaw. The entire coin was bright red. Wrong metal, wrong weight, and Jefferson's head looked like it had been squeezed to fit the smaller planchette. Collectors were stunned. It was one of only two confirmed to exist. Worn, yes, but real. It sold for a jaw-dropping $38,500, and that was just the beginning. Another 1990 Jefferson nickel showed up with a full brockage error. That's when the coin is struck against another coin instead of a blank planchette, creating a mirror image impression on one side. It's like a ghosted duplicate, eerie, backwards, and beautiful. It was circulated with scratches and wear all over, and it still sold for $12,400. Then came the blockbuster, a double denomination strike, a Jefferson nickel struck on top of a struck Lincoln cent. You could see both images, both dates, two faces of American history overlapping in one unbelievable mistake. That single coin shattered expectations and sold at auction for over $184,000. And what about full steps? The 1990 Jefferson nickel is notoriously weakly struck, so a high-grade 1990D with crisp, complete steps on Monticello, nearly impossible to find. But one collector did. It was graded MS-68 with full steps, and it brought in $26,000. Clean, sharp, and worth more than most people's first car. Now, let's talk emotion for a second. How many of these coins passed through hands unnoticed? How many were shoved into vending machines or tossed in gas station trays? The idea that a six-figure mistake could be hiding in plain sight, under dirt, beneath years of wear, it's both thrilling and tragic. Because the truth is, circulated coins hide everything. Errors, rare metals, historic blunders, and sometimes the damage actually helps tell the story. Proof that this coin survived, that it escaped the mint's control and made it into the wild against all odds. So the next time you come across a 1990 Jefferson nickel, even one that looks like it's been through a blender, flip it over. Check the steps. Feel the weight. Look for anything strange. That do. All right, now we're looking at a 2007P Jefferson nickel, and finally, we've reached the last coin in our countdown, a 1992 Jefferson nickel in plain old circulated condition. But don't relax just yet, because this ordinary 1992 nickel might just be the ultimate sleeper coin, the one that nobody saw coming.
until it exploded in value. It's scratched, it's dull, the luster is long gone. Just another nickel, right? Wrong again. Because hidden among the 661 million nickels struck that year are a few mysterious pieces that slip through with jaw-dropping errors, and at least one of them has already pulled in over $152,000 at auction. Let's dive in. 1992 was a transitional year for the U.S. Mint. Technology was improving, coin dies were changing, but with that evolution came new problems and new opportunities for mistakes. That year, a small batch of Jefferson nickels was discovered with one of the rarest errors ever recorded, the wrong planchet strike. In one case, a 1992 D nickel was struck on a Costa Rican 5-cent blank. Same size, wrong alloy. The coin had a strange color, lighter weight, and didn't ring like a regular U.S. nickel. It was found in circulation, and when it hit the auction floor, it stunned everyone, raking in $21,850. But it doesn't stop there. Another rare example surfaced, a double denomination error. A 1992 Jefferson nickel struck over a struck 1992 Lincoln cent. Both heads, both dates, one coin. It was like a numismatic horror movie, and collectors loved it. Despite heavy wear and circulation marks, that error coin sold for $63,000. And then came the full brockage error. The obverse of Jefferson was perfectly mirrored into the reverse, wiping Monticello completely off the coin. The fields were smooth like glass, eerie and beautiful. That coin, even with a massive scrape across the edge, brought in $9,750. And now, for the one that truly shocked the community. The 1992 Jefferson nickel mule error. It was struck with a reverse intended for a 1993 proof die. It had a unique font, deeper steps on Monticello, and a faint frost on the high points, even in circulated condition. That coin, verified and authenticated by PCGS, sold for a wild $152,000. Let that sink in. A 1992 nickel that looked totally ordinary was hiding a minting error so subtle, even experienced collectors missed it. And what about the full steps versions? One MS-67 example from the Denver Mint, with every line on Monticello's steps crisp and complete, brought in $12,500. That's right, $12,000 for a coin millions of people ignored every single day. Now here's the emotional punch. Most people who had these nickels spent them. They used them for coffee, bus fare, laundromats, arcade games, gone in seconds, never realizing they were holding a 5- or 6-figure rarity in their palm. And that's why this